Hello, welcome. Uh, Thank you for joining us. I think everyone watching is going to be in for a real treat. We have four fantastic artists who are going to discuss, three fantastic artists, sorry, who are going to discuss their lovely artwork that is currently on display in the exhibition Canopy at the Silk Purse Arts Center. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. And back on track. Yes, so Canopy is the brand new exhibition currently on display at the Silk Purse Arts Center here in West Vancouver, and it features the amazing artwork of Danyne Johnston, Christina Peressini, and Catherine Trembath, and we're going to meet them and hear all about their fantastic artwork. My name is Stephen Snyder. I'm the Gallery Communications Manager for the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, and we run all of the arts programming that happens here at the Silk Purse. And I'd like to acknowledge that here in West Van, we are on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, in particular the Squamish Nation and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. And we're incredibly grateful to our host nations for their stewardships of these beautiful lands since time immemorial, and incredibly grateful to be able to celebrate arts and culture with and alongside our host nations and community members. If you have any questions or comments for our artists throughout this talk, you can drop those in the chat section, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So Canopy, it is an exhibition in culture inspired by the trees around us in our local forests and groves, and all of the lands and waters and things that are hidden below them, and even the view from above them. And we have three artists working in a variety of media and style who are exploring those themes. And the exhibit is on until March 31st, and we have some other programming besides this talk to go along with it, and we'll tell you about that a little bit later. So let's meet our amazing artists. They're going to tell you a little bit about who they are. Let's start with Danyne. Danyne Johnston, could you please introduce yourself? Of media and style who are exploring those themes. And the exhibit is on until March 31st. And we have some other programming besides this talk to go along with it, and we'll tell you about that a little bit later. Sorry, we just got a little bit of feedback here. Our amazing artists. They're going to tell you that up. Start with Danyne. Danyne Johnston, could you please introduce yourself? Of media and style who are exploring those themes. I do. Sorry about that, folks. Yes, please, Danyne, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Oh, I think you're muted.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry. I tried to unmute it and it just, everything else came up. So sorry about that.
Yep, no, that's fair. It happens all the time.
So I'm Danyne Johnston. I'm an artist on the North Shore in North Vancouver, and I have a studio on Pemberton Street at 195. And I'm a full-time artist in painting in acrylics, and I paint mostly West Coast forests, oceans, arbutus trees. I feel at peace in the forest, and this exhibition is just right up my alley. So thanks very much, Stephen.
Excellent. So thank you for that introduction, getting to know you a little bit, and we'll get to know you a little bit further. Next, Christina Peressini, could you please tell us a bit about you?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So I work out of a studio on the east side of Vancouver. I've been there for about 2 years. I've been working in this form of the sort of work you're going to see in this show since about 2015, on and off, but really more in earnest in the last 2 years since I got the studio and stopped having to work off of a corner of this desk in a shoebox apartment. We probably have all been there before. And the majority of my work revolves around coastal themes, living on the west coast of Canada. So trees and seeing trees from different views. In the case of this exhibit, seeing them from quite high up. In the case of some of my maps, and quite close In the case of the piece you're going to see later today as my sort of feature piece to talk about. Yeah, that's a bit from me.
Excellent. Catherine Trembath, could you please
Hey.
tell us a bit about you?
And you can hear me. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Hi. Yeah, I'm Catherine Trembath. I'm an artist living here on Vancouver Island in the Oceanside area. I actually grew up in West Van. So when I was dropping off the paintings the other day, I was telling Stephen that right next door is the park, John Lawson Park, where I took my first painting course when I was 8. So it's been really cool to come back and be able to show in West Van. And I do lots of different things, but where my heart lies, I mean, I do drawing and portraits and abstract, but where my focus and my heart lies right now is in the forest. I find my happy place is in the forest, and when I go in the forest, I see how the light comes through the canopy and it hits like a salal leaf or something like that, and it just makes my heart sing. So I try to translate that beauty, that joy onto a canvas or a piece of paper so that other people can experience that as well. So I work in acrylic and all different sorts of sizes. Anyways, it's really nice to be exhibiting with 2 other really talented artists. And I really am grateful to the West Van Arts Council for inviting me to show my work. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that first step into getting to know you and sharing a bit about your past and your present and where you are as artists. I think we're all going to have a real treat seeing each other's work and talking about it, which we're going to get to right now. We have a brief video of the exhibition, a quick little tour to give you all a little sample of what it looks like. Hopefully entice you to come on in and check it out. And we're just going to pull that up right now. Excellent. So this is what you would see as you come in off of our waterfront entrance at the Silk Purse. Just a quick tour around of the space, see how everything's laid out. A funny little space, as you can see. It used to be a house for those of you who've never been here before. But we're going to start and get a little bit of a closer work at some of Catherine's pieces. We've got these 2 fantastic studies here on the piano. To move over to some of Christina's fantastic work, these really cool, almost topographic maps of local areas. All in cut paper. Yes, and then we get some more of Catherine, of your really great work. Really nice, bold colors. Yeah, a little bit of wildlife in there too. Well, there are a lot of sort of similar themes happening in the work as we go through. I'm sure everyone watching can see how just unique each artist has interpreted these sort of elements to create their own point of view from them. And now we get to see Danyne, some of your lovely paintings. Sure we'll talk about it, but a really wonderful sense of light in your work. Now we move on to more of Christina's fantastic cut paper pieces. Here we've moved away from the maps to these really cool views of branches or roots. It's nice to have some 3D work mixed in with the paintings. I think it's a real nice complement. And varying levels of representation in all of your work as well, depicting what we see and how you're interpreting it. And then we come to Danyne's final work. Yeah, that's it. That's just a quick little tour of the show. Hopefully that will give you all the enticement to come on in and see it. It was a pleasure to hang. I think it looks really fantastic together. All of your work is so unique, but very, very welcoming, accessible. And the show's only been up for 2 days, but we've had a lot of positive reviews already. So if you're watching this while the show is still up, please come on down to the Silk Purse Art Center here in West Van and check it out. Next, we are going to hear from all three of our artists. They've all selected one of the pieces on display, and they're going to talk a little bit more in depth about it to let you know a bit more behind the scenes of their process, their inspirations, and what you can expect when you come on into to see the exhibit. Let's start with, we'll go in reverse order. Let's start with Catherine. I'm going to pull up the painting you've selected. Fantastic. Could you please tell us about this great work of art?
Thanks. Thanks, Stephen. This is Englishman River. That's what it's called. It's in Englishman River Park. It's right beside the big Englishman River in Parksville. Well, and so these are mostly deciduous trees, kind of scrubby water ones that you'd see in a swamp. So what I did with this one that I've never really painted. This is the first of this kind of painting that I've done. And it was so fun because what I did was I started with pastel. And that's how I got so much color up in the canopy there. It's because I just had fun just putting down all these pastel colors and just getting a feel for the forest. And then I went over it with acrylic and I kept that. So it has that kind of stained glass look. But I mean, if I worked from a photo and you don't see those colors in the photo, but I feel those colors when I'm there. And when I'm in the forest, the energy and the warmth, the excitement of being in the forest, I put that into the color. And I had so much fun doing this. I love the little bridge. That was actually a new little bridge they put up because I guess the other one, the flood had taken it away. But I don't know, like this one someone said, oh, how did you do this? I'm like, actually, I just kind of I just followed this path. I didn't really know where I was going, but then all of a sudden I ended up here and I was super happy. And that happens with some paintings where it seems things just seem to flow through. And if you can let that muse come, it's amazing the things that come out the other side. So yeah, I'm really happy with this one. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And thank you for pointing out the little bridge in there. That's a great detail. I'm just curious, you mentioned starting with pastel and then moving into acrylics. Is that something you do often, sort of mixed media kind of work?
I can do, yeah. Sometimes I love drawing. And so sometimes I'll draw with pencil and sometimes I'll draw with chalk pastel. This was chalk pastel. Sometimes I'll start with acrylic and then I'll put some oil pastel on top. You can see I scraped away some of the paint in some cases. It's just a matter of, I don't know, like to me, it's really about having fun. And if that playfulness, if that joy, people can feel it in the art, then I think that makes me happy anyways. So it's something sometimes is, I guess, is the answer to your question. Wherever the muse takes me, Stephen, I don't know.
Excellent. Ah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, and oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Oh. Just something else. Within the series of work that you have up here, not only this piece, but everything else, it seems like there's a lot of, as you said, play. You know, sometimes things are fairly realistic. Sometimes you get a little bit more mildly abstract, like the piece that we're looking at here. What's going on in sort of that sense creatively for you? Why this sort of sense of exploration, I suppose, in style and technique?
The two pieces I have framed and matted are on paper. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to capture light. And the way I did that was to kind of use some watered down acrylic and let the white of the paper show through. And in doing so, that felt a little bit more realistic painterly, I guess you'd say. So that was the direction I came there. I really wanted the Salal to jump right off the page, just like when you're walking in the forest, you just see that bounce of light. So I'm playing with different what do you call it? Strata? I don't know, things that you put the paint on. Just to anything to be able to capture the light. So in my play, I try different avenues and some just bend towards realism. And I guess the other thing I like to do is use a palette knife. And the thing I like about a palette knife is that I can't get really picky. And so I allow myself to be more abstract. And with the palette knife, I'm able to I don't know, I've made it shinier as if the waters, it's just rained and the woods are really shiny from the rain. Yeah, I think it's, for me as an artist, it's really important for me to keep my sense of exploration, which is through play. So, you know, if someone says, can you do exactly this one again? I'm like, sorry. When you get one of my originals, it's really going to be an original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Catherine.
Thank you, Stephen.
And next we've got Christina. Christina, could you please tell us about this fantastic piece?
Yeah, so maybe it would help if I went back a little bit to talk about sort of how I sort of hit upon this style of execution. Might be a little give a bit of context. So I'm actually a graphic designer by trade. So I've been doing that work for over 20 years, and I started out as predominantly a print designer. And which the contrast to that would be, back in those days, you were either a print designer or you were a web designer. You kind of were one, had your foot mostly in one or the other. Some people could straddle the two. Web was never, my heart was never really in it. It was always with paper. And I don't know, I always found a certain comfort in working with it. But then over the years, as time went on and you know, paper started to die, really, is what everyone gets used to say. Print is dead, print is dead. It's all about digital output now. It's all about things going on the web, things being delivered via apps or via PDF through emails. And so this print is not dead, but it did certainly start to wither away in my profession. And so I had a really strong gravity towards paper goods and to sort of pick up and keep on with this medium that I loved so much, this paper medium, this tactile medium. I started out producing greeting cards, and I would laser cut them, die cut them. Rarely did I hand cut them, and they were produced in large quantities. And so slowly that started to die. And I thought, wow, I still want to keep this in my life somehow. And so I started making these sort of framed, composed, sort of layered images like this one I would say about 8 years ago. And so it was kind of born out of design. And that's why it's really hard for me to say where the dividing line is between my artwork and my design work, because I find that the two are very enmeshed in a lot of ways, certainly the way I practice producing my paper artwork. That might be different for other paper artists, but for me, I still feel strongly that I'm wearing a design hat when I'm putting these things together. So, when I started really in earnest working on my art practice about 8 years ago was kind of the birth of this, but it lay fallow for a while. And then about 2 years ago, when I moved into my studio, it started to become, a stronger practice for me. I chose coastal BC and the West Coast as my subject matter. It seemed appropriate. It seemed like it would have a welcomed audience, and trees were a big part of it, but in a slightly different way than the way perhaps other people are interpreting them or exhibiting them or painting or drawing or sculpting them. So in this piece, which I call New Roots, and I play off the word roots by calling it roots, ROUTES, I'm kind of using this idea of the imagery of tree roots or plant roots to talk about building new roots. And we were coming out of the pandemic when this piece was made in 2022. We were out of lockdown and things were finally starting to get back to some semblance of normal. And so with the work, I try to be uplifting with it, even when it is, on the more abstract side. I name it in such a way that I hope it's going to generate some curiosity in people and help them not just spoon feed them what this is. And I've had other people approach us and say, oh, is this an axon? Or, it looks like a bloodshot eyeball. And I love all those answers, because there is no real answer. It's art to me it's a personal expression. And I think when you look at it, you're receiving it in a personal way. So you're going to see it in the way you're going to see it. So together as a collection, what I've given to you, I think is a pretty good cross section of my approach to depicting trees and depicting the coast. I've got those abstracted wood and waves pieces that look like bark. And this piece and the companion piece that is hung beside it at the show, which is called When Trees Walk, which is like this. And it's my interpretation of if a tree were to uproot itself and go for a stroll, that's what it might actually look like. So I'm with the 3D thing that I have going on, I'm always trying to either use quite thick, toothy paper to cast enough shadow to bring some play of light and dark. And in the case of this piece, I've got spacers that separate each of the 3 layers of paper so that you get that kind of funky parallax, effect when you walk past it. So effectively, you're kind of bringing it to life by walking around it or peering around the corners, which people are always doing with my work. They're always trying to figure out how I've made it look like it's floating. And I love that. So I'm trying to kind of get people to really lean in and just bring their own interpretation to the work. And I often refer to it these days as a bit of a palette cleanser for the eyes, because it really is kind of an outlier compared to a lot of other work that people see on walls in exhibits and galleries at the studio where I practice. I'm the only one doing work of this sort. So yeah, a bit of an outlier, a bit of a designer, a bit of an artist, and sort of it's all mashing together in a kind of interesting and wondrous West Coast way for me.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. That was great. Yeah, you can definitely see the designer background. There's a lot of really thoughtful compositions. Everything's very graphic. I was curious about the color choices. For instance, like this piece and a lot of the other the ones like this. These really soft, muted grays and blues on these white backgrounds. I'm just curious about what your choice was in choosing these palettes for these pieces.
Sure. Yeah, I make the art for me first, and if you came to my house, you'll see there's a lot of this. The wall behind me is a case in point. Lots of very calm. I don't know how I did that. Give myself a thumbs up. By doing that, I see. Yeah, there are a lot of I love my environment to be very calm. Even though this is a busy piece, it's still got a calmness to it. It's still very tranquil. And I'm not trying to tranquilize anybody. I still hope that people will lean in and go, oh, interesting. This is and be sparked and be kind of enthusiastic about it. But it really is what I need. It's more of what I need on the inside, because there's so much going on up here at all times that it's a bit of a meditation for me. I find that for any kind of high strung, anxious side of me, I find it very calming. And when people come into my studio, as they do sometimes for the culture crawl, for example, every November, I've done it twice in a row now. Some people totally get it and it's their jam, and other people will like take one glance in the door and just keep moving. But the people who come in, a lot of times I'll say, oh, it's just so calm and peaceful in here. And they love the color scheme because it is very muted. It's not too brash. But there's a time and a place for color. And I love color, but for my own practice, I've really stuck to more muted tones. And I am trying to branch out. I will say that. It's just taking a bit of time.
That's excellent. Branch out. Yeah. And then just on the fact that these are hand cut. You mentioned previously you were doing, designing cards and things, we're using die cuts and stuff. How often or what's sort of it like having to do all of these? Because a lot of these pieces, you can see there's these little branches and twigs and stuff. They're fairly meticulous to have to cut these out. What's that process like for you?
Yeah, so this piece in particular, and the companion piece that is hanging beside it, the cutting is actually not too bad. The paper I use is not super thick, so that's helpful. When I do get into using thicker paper, it's a lot tougher on my arms. So it becomes one of those things where, the art is now starting to hurt me. So I'm trying really hard to pace myself so that I still have use of this arm for many years to come. But maybe to give you a sense, like I don't freehand this. This piece particular started with a sketch that I did on my iPad, and that was probably 2 years or 3 years before, maybe 2 years, before I ever actually cut it. And it was a snowflake originally. And I thought, oh, it kind of looks like antlers. So maybe it'll be kind of a snowflake made of antlers. And it was a bit of a hybrid. And I thought, I want to cut this out of paper. I want to try and find a way. But the lines I had drawn were so thin, I didn't know quite how to do it. And I thought, how am I going to mount this thing? Do I do it in reverse? Essentially, I took that sketch, I thickened the lines, took that it was a digital sketch, brought it into Illustrator, turned it into a vector image so that I could then play with colors, because I wanted to be able to color it first, because I thought it's a whole lot of work to cut this sort of detail. I want to see pretty clearly in vector form what this thing could look like when I actually cut it out of real honest to goodness paper. So there are steps involved. So I got into Illustrator. I decided how it was going to be composed with that nucleus kind of up in the top left-hand corner where the boundaries of the frame were going to be. And then I printed out a template, used graphite paper to trace it onto my paper that I was using in the final composition, traced it all out using graphite paper, which is like carbon paper, but made of graphite, and then cut it at that point. And so there are some mistakes in here, but you would never know it because, that's the nature of trees and branches and roots and things, right?
Excellent. Well, it looks great to me. Can't see any mistakes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, Christina. And then next, Danyne, could you please tell us about this painting?
Okay, can you hear me? It's all good?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I was afraid to mute it again. I didn't want to go through that again. So I live in Lynn Valley, and we go out into the forest all the time with the dog. And it's such a place of peacefulness. And even though it's very busy on the weekends, people tend to go there as a landmark to see nature just on our doorstep. It's just so untouched and beautiful. You see a lot of these wood structures in with the suspension bridge and stairs and walkways and things like that. And I really like the juxtapositions of the two. I feel like it's keeping us contained, but it's also keeping the land untouched on the most part by our feet. There's a lot of mountain bikers and hikers on the North Shore. It's quite well known for that. So I've done a lot of bike paths, and I try to imbue the sense of peacefulness and light. That's my sort of thing, is once I've captured the light and the depth in the painting, and then I feel like, okay, it's done. There's a lot of detail in here. There's a lot of color. When you look at it quite closely, when someone comes in, you'll see there's a lot of underpainting with reds and oranges and yellows and things like that. So you have to sort of look up close and you can see it, but from a distance, perhaps you don't. But I just love painting trees. We were talking earlier, and I just love like touching them and seeing the different bark textures and leaves and the color of them. And I don't think I'll ever tire of that either. and then you'll get like the salal and the ferns and a lot of native plants in on the North Shore and on the island. And it's just we live in such a magical, beautiful place. For a while there, I was doing a lot of ocean scenes as well. And then I thought, well, I'm just going to paint the trees over the ocean. So I did a lot of arbutus trees and things like that too. So it just kind of marries the two, with the big skies and the big rolly clouds, and as well as the gnarly branches of the arbutus trees, which are native to the West Coast. Apparently they're located within, I think, is it 2 miles of the coast on the most part, all over BC all the way down to California, apparently. So anyway, do you have any questions at all for me, Stephen, or no? It's all good.
Oh, yeah. Sure. I've got a few. Your sense of light, as you said, it's something that you really focus on. And while your work is, very recognizable, right? Like, I know this is in Lynn Canyon. I can see, any other pieces. I recognize that path. I know that's a tree. I know it's a bush. But there's something, I don't know if it's about the light or the color, but there's this heightened sense of reality almost to your work that makes it seem a little almost magical. Like it's almost a bit of another world. I wonder if that's something intentional, or if that's just how you work. That's just how you see the world, as all these heightened colors and textures and lighting.
I think I like to amp the colors up a little bit. I had an instructor once, and after seeing my work through a few classes, she said to me, well, you're not afraid of color. And I think, quite often, depending whether it's a cloudy day or sunny, you get the contrast with the shadows and the light, or you get a very soft, muted sort of greens, mossy, and browns and things like that. But I like to say, well, this is a beautiful place, and that's why I amp the colors up a little bit. So yeah. And also it plays on to achieve a sense of depth in a painting, you have to go cool and softer in the background and more warmer and more focused in your brushstrokes in the front, so that I want you to be able to walk into the painting with your eyes. So yeah,
definitely. And then just another quick question. I don't know if it applies to any of the pieces that are in the show, but you like to work plein air a lot, correct?
Definitely. I think it's really good, actually, for a landscape painter to go out into the landscape, because when you take a photo with your camera, or I guess maybe you have a really expensive camera, but I quite often, as I'm out and I take a picture with my phone, and I find the highlights, the lightest colors, are overexposed, and the shadows are always dark. So you don't get the actual color and the actual depth that's there. And so when you're there looking at it, you can actually say, oh, that's actually a velvety brown rather, or rather than black, which is what comes out in the camera. And also you have to paint pretty fast when you're plein air painting, because you have about an hour and a half, and then the light's completely different. So you could have this magical beam of light coming through, and 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, it's gone, so you have to paint really fast. And I mean, you can take a picture of it too, but to actually look at it and see, to get the depth and perceive what's there, it's quite valuable to do that. I try to get out, a couple of times over the summer, and we're on holiday and things like that. So yeah.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, for sharing, everyone. That was fantastic. A couple of things that popped up. It seems you all have in common a sense, great process kind of based work to a degree, and also a sense of play were some common things. You all seem to really enjoy it and like this sense of exploration, but you all have these steps that you kind of have to go through to get to where you want to go. And sometimes that's something and sometimes it's something you're just kind of discovering along the way. That's another great connective tissue between not only your subject matter, which you've all kind of shared a bit about your inspirations for choosing sort of nature as your subject. I'm just curious about, if you say weren't here on the West Coast, do you think this would still be sort of the subjects that you're drawn to sort of exploring and using as sort of your jumping off point? Anyone and everyone can kind of jump in and answer. And if not, what is it about the West Coast that sort of you think really speaks to you and that you need to sort of express and get out?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think if I were to live somewhere else, I would still probably be captivated by the natural environment and geography, the same way that I am with BC. As long as there's enough contrast. If I were living on a prairie, I don't think I'd be able to do my elevation maps, obviously, right? But yeah, what you say about a sense of fun and play, sometimes I feel like, because there are so many steps to the way I have worked my artwork, and it's still I still see very much the type A in me is like, okay, we're doing it this way, and it's this step, and then this step, and then you bring it into the computer and you play with the colors. And, I could just explore more. I could just sketch right on the paper that I'm going to cut and then cut it. But I just never do that. And I think that is the designer in me, the planner part of me, that just cannot let go of that. And I don't think of it as a flaw, but I think of it as a feature, because I'm bringing to it, there is something very controlled and meticulous about the execution of what I do. And so in a way, it stands to reason that every stage of the process could be sort of, meticulously crafted as well. And it's kind of on brand, in a sense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally.
Can I just jump in?
Please.
Christina, have you ever seen Matisse's cutouts?
I don't think so.
Oh my, so Henri Matisse, are you familiar with the Impressionist?
Oh, Matisse, sorry, yes, Matisse, I have, yeah, sorry, I thought you said Matthias, I'm like,
oh sorry.
Yes, and I keep thinking that when I'm an old woman and I can't hold an X-Acto knife or a blade anymore, it's going to be a pair of like blunt-nosed children's scissors, or I'm just going to be ripping it with my hands.
Because
yes, I love it.
It's painting with, I mean, it was cool because when I read about him or saw anything, he was his brush was the scissors, and I just thought that was so fascinating to be able to use a different kind of tool to express yourself. Right.
Yeah.
And the way he layered. And so, yeah, I mean, cutting things out, that's incredibly cool.
Yeah, it satisfies some part of my brain. I don't know. Just even in my design work, I was always drawn to Illustrator and creating vectors as opposed to, you know, big swashes of color in Photoshop or in some digital you know, in some other digital program where I'm painting with a eye pencil or something. For me, it's still always hard edged lines. And it obviously satisfies some part of me that I can't really articulate properly, but you know, it is what it is.
So West Coast, I think it's the landscape and where you live. I grew up in BC, which is maybe unusual. But we lived overseas as well. We lived in Australia for a while, and I plein air painted there. And it's you know, they have a lot of burnt siennas in their soil, and then you have the water and the incredible skies, and so I think it's, for me, it's where you are, and there's an endless amount of subject matter on the coast, and I mean the cloud formations. I'll be driving home on the highway. Sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, drive, but wow, like the colors, especially sunsets and things like that. Like I think the natural world is just so incredibly beautiful and well designed that it's just. I used to be an interior designer as well, so I know what you're talking about with lines and stuff like that, Christina. I'm in connections and I think in composition it helps as well. But yeah, that's my take on painting BC West Coast. So.
For me, if I were to not be on the West Coast, which would be so sad, I'm always looking for light, the quality of light. Like imagine that light in Australia, different, right? The light that the Impressionists captured in the south of France, different, right?
Yeah.
The light here, so diffused. Like you see a bright colored yellow house here, and it's, to me, too bright. You know, something more muddy just suits the light of the West Coast, right? So I think I love the West Coast because of the forests. The forests are my friends. They're like my buddies I hang out with. It makes me happy. But if I were to be somewhere else, it would always be about how can I capture the light that I see right here? And that's just fascinating to me, because if we don't have light, it's all going to be dark, and then you can't see anything.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And just have a comment here from Simon Fox Guitar. Says, amazing work all around. Have to agree with you, Simon. I think it's interesting, all of the backgrounds that you all come from, right? We've got a graphic design, Christina, some interior design and marketing with Danyne. And Catherine, you come from environmental geography, correct?
Oh, I've done a little bit of everything. I've been a graphic designer. I've been an art director, never done interior design. Lots and lots of different things, because I'm just I'm interested in lots of different things. I think the painting's nice because it brings all those things together and it lets me express myself. Kind of, I guess, what you're doing, Christina, where it's like, okay, now I don't have clients telling me what to do, and I don't have this deadline hanging over me and a budget. I get to do what I want. Yay!
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting you say this. I was just chatting or reading a note on LinkedIn from a guy who I know through the graphic design circles, and he was saying he didn't feel there was a whole lot of division between art and design. Art is a personal expression, which I think differentiates it to some degree. But there is so much overlap. I cannot untangle that overlap. But I just keep coming down to personal expression and I think the one time that may be different is if somebody commissions me to create a specific piece of artwork for them, then you're dealing with a client and a budget and a timeline, just like you are as a designer, right?
Right.
Am I right? Yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. How much time do we have? Yeah.
Well, I think actually it's about time we wrap up this conversation. Thank you, Danyne Johnston, Christina Peressini, and Catherine Trembath for sharing these fantastic insights. And thank you everyone who is watching live and who's going to watch this in the future. If you are watching this while Canopy is still on display at the Silk Purse, that's until March 31st. Please come on down to the gallery and take in all of this breathtaking artwork and these personal expressions of the world around us. And if you're watching this before March the 10th, please come on down to the gallery between 2 and 3:30. We're going to have a reception. You get a chance to meet all three of our amazing artists in person, see their artwork, get to chat with them about art and life and anything under the sun. So please come on down and join us for that. If you want to know more about our fantastic artists and follow them, links in the description of this video to their website, social media, all that stuff, so you can stay up to date with everything that they're doing. So thank you again, Danyne, Christina, and Catherine, for sharing your beautiful artwork in our gallery and for sharing yourselves with us in this conversation. It's been a real blast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So come on down, check out Canopy at the Silk Purse until March 31st. Hope to see you there. And we'll see you next month for another artist talk. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.